Hey everyone, Shaun Stevenson here, author of the Throne series. And as you can see, what's this right here? Oh, it's a little shamrock because, what's that right there? Another shamrock because it's a new month. It is now the month of March. And that means it's time for a reading roundup. I can't believe February's already over. And I have gotten to read so many good books this last month. I read 14 books total, and I can't wait to share them all with you because there were some really good ones in here. I am already thinking about my top 10 for 2024, and it is going to be so difficult to choose what books are going to go on my top 10 because I've read so many good books so far. So let's dive in and see what we read in February 2024. First up was a Goosebumps book, and it was number 22 in the series, Ghost Beach. Now, this one, I had a lot of mixed feelings about it, and I still do. I was trying to decide what I think about it, and I still think I stand by what I said in my review of this book, which is that I think the ending didn't go to the right places it should have gone. It was just a little too obvious. And a lot of times R.L. Stine can be really not obvious in the way that he writes his stories, but this one I feel like he just kind of telegraphs to you exactly what's going to happen by the end. And it's exactly what happens. So I didn't enjoy it as much. It was still fun, though. I did not dislike reading this book. That is for sure. I liked reading it a lot. But it was just not my favorite because I was able to really guess everything that was kind of happening. And then the ending left it on a note that I thought, oh, I don't really... what are you going to do with that? Like, you kind of suddenly have switched the personality traits of this one character all of a sudden, and I don't know what to think about that. So that was my review of Ghost Beach. I didn't exactly love it, but it still was a fun Goosebumps book and a really good way to kick off February, honestly. The next book I read, I loved. It was so good, and that is Alex Rider, Nightshade Revenge. And this book, the more I think about it, I still really enjoyed it. It was so much fun. I thought it was such a good entry in the series, and this is another top-notch Alex Rider book in my opinion. I don't think there are any that I would say are bad. There are definitely some that I think are my favorites over others, and this one is definitely on the good list. It's not my favorite, and it's not even probably my top 5 favorites of the Alex Rider books, but it was still so good, so much fun. Check out my review for this one, and also I just recorded some news for the new Alex Rider TV series. So definitely check that out as well, because there were some interesting headlines from Deadline about the new Alex Rider season 3 and what book it's going to be based off of and all that sort of stuff. Plus, we get a picture with Alex and Julia Rothman, which is so exciting because she's such a good villain. I can't wait. So that was Alex Rider, Nightshade Revenge, the second book I read in February. And then the third book I read in February was a brand new series by some authors I really enjoyed their previous books of, and that is the Doomsday Archives, The Wandering Hour, book number 1 in the series by Zach Lauren Clark and Nick Eliopoulos. And this book was so terrifying. I actually really got scared reading this book. It actually made me jump and gasp out loud because the pages are really thick, and then you turn the page to sometimes these photos. This one's not a creepy one, but you turn the page to these photos that you can't quite see coming because the pages are so thick, and sometimes they are super creepy. This was a really fun book, and I can't wait for the second book in this series because this is going to be a really good creepypasta series. It's about like these kids that are in this town where all these weird, strange things happen, and they're trying to figure out like, why is this town the like epicenter of all this weirdness? And lo and behold, there are reasons, and it is so good. I so thoroughly enjoyed this book. It has such a creepy villain. So much fun. So definitely check this one out if you haven't yet. The fourth book I read was definitely, a Halloween book at Valentine's time. But that's okay because it was Fear Street number 8, Halloween Party. Now, this to me, I think is still my favorite out of all the Fear Street books I've read so far. And I just really, really enjoyed this one so much. It had so many fun twists and turns. The ending was great. It had this like epic finale that I thought was really fun. There was only one one unbelievable thing, in my opinion, that I thought, wait a minute, what? How does that happen when this one character's thought through all these things and they didn't think of this? That's the only thing I didn't like about it, but otherwise, this book was so good and so creepy and so atmospheric. It is everything I want in a Fear Street book. This one is definitely a good one to check out if you've never read any of the Fear Street books. Read Halloween Party. It is a blast. And I really enjoyed reading this one. The next book I read was kind of a gamble because I didn't know if it was going to be based on episodes from the TV series it's based on, or if the books would be new stories. And thankfully, they're brand new stories for the whole series. What book am I talking about? Eerie, Indiana, book number 1, Return to Foreverwhere. This one was so much fun. I definitely enjoyed it. I think I enjoyed it more in retrospect after having some time than in the moment after I finished it and reviewed it, but this one was a lot of fun. I highly enjoyed it. Eerie, Indiana is a series that is kind of for people who like some Goosebumps, but a little bit of Twin Peaks and X-Files feel too, because it has sometimes that technology horror or suspense rather than just like creatures and things like that. And that's definitely this book. It has such a creepy, premise. There's a lot going on, and I really enjoyed it a lot. I do think, though, if you remember the episode that this book is a sequel to, it might ruin it a little bit. I did not remember the episode until after reading this book, and then I thought, oh yeah, I remember this. And then it kind of came back to me. So if you've seen the episode, maybe give it some time in between so that way you can not have it in your head when you go into this book. But otherwise, this was a fun one. Plus, I love these ripped page opening things. I can't remember what they're called. There's a technical term for them, but I don't remember. But it's so cool, and the colors on this thing are awesome. Just so 1990s. It's ridiculous. So that was Return to Foreverwhere, Eerie, Indiana, book number 1. And then the 6th book I read was another incredible entry in the Mysterious series by Matt McMahon. This one was The Snatcher of Raven Hollow. And this book, oh, it was so creepy. I actually think this one might be the creepiest of the 3 Mysterious books I've read so far. I've read books 1, 2, and 3. And there's still book 4 I haven't read, and then book 5 comes out in August. But this one, definitely super creepy. And the ending was so creepy and a little disturbing, and I just loved it so much. This one is about some kids who discover that in their town there are babies that are going missing, and they think it's some kind of a mythological creature that is stealing them, and so the 2 kids are the only ones who believe that it could possibly be a creature that's taking them instead of a kidnapper or anything like that. So they go out to try and find out what has happened to these babies, and they find more than they bargained for. I will say this one is definitely the most intense of the 3 Mysterious books, and if you have a kid who gets pretty scared easily, I might suggest reading this one first before letting your kid read it. If you're an adult reading these because you enjoy middle grade books like I do, go for it. It'll be definitely an exciting time because this one was super creepy. It was a little more of a slow burn than the other Mysterious books, but not a ton of a slow burn, just a tiny bit of a slow burn where things build up to anticipation of what is happening. You definitely get a lot of creature action though up front. It's not like one of those kind of horror stories where you see the leg and you see the arm and you see the claw and you see the glowing eyes, and then all of a sudden the very end it's there's the monster. The monster shows up pretty early, and it is always mysterious how the monsters show up. It might be monsterious. So that was Mysterious book 2, The Snatcher of Raven Hollow. The 7th book I read this month, though, kind of a clunker, not gonna lie. I was highly disappointed in Heebie-Jeebies number 6, Wild Ride on Bigfoot Mountain. This book was just so disappointing, and I'm so sad because the Heebie-Jeebies books up to this point were kind of going pretty well. I really enjoyed them. They have kind of that Scooby-Doo-ish sort of vibe, but a little creepier than that. But this one just, it was so many plot holes and so many things that I was wondering, what? Like, what are you doing? What is happening? That makes no sense. And the main characters were so obnoxious. They were totally unlikable. And like I said, this was just kind of a weird one, and I'm really scared. I actually haven't even started another Heebie Jeebies book yet because I'm scared of what will happen in the next ones. If they're going to be like this, or like previous ones in the series, which were actually pretty good. Like the Ice Cream Truck and Uncle from Another Planet. Those were pretty good entries, I thought, in this series. But this one, not good. In fact, this isn't the lowest. Oh, this is, I think, the lowest rated book I've done this year so far in 2024. I gave it a 1.5 star, I'm pretty sure. So it was not good. It was bad. The 8th book I read this month so far, though, was so good. I highly enjoyed it. And that was Percy Jackson and the Olympians, book number 6, The Chalice of the Gods by Rick Riordan. This book was great. I loved it so much. It was so much fun. I enjoyed it, every moment of it. It was like the coziest middle grade fantasy book I've ever read, I think. It was so just cozy and good, and I just had a great time reading it. It kind of took me back to the Lightning Thief days, although it doesn't have as big of stakes is the only thing. So if you're in Percy Jackson for like the world-ending apocalyptic stakes, then this is not the book for you. But if you just want more stories in the Percy Jackson world with a good plot, this is a great one. Definitely check out my review on this book. It was a lot of fun to talk about, and I'm excited to see where book number 2 in this new little trilogy within the Percy Jackson Olympian series goes. There's going to be another book coming out this fall, and I'm super excited to read that one next. And then book number 9. Okay, this was another Goosebumps book. And I was excited to read this one because people talk about it and love it and think it's one of the best of the series. And I just didn't love it very much. And that was book number 16, One Day at Horrorland. Now, this book, I think the very beginning chapters, I felt dragged on and on and on so much. It just kind of meandered, and it went from just one thing to the next at the very beginning with inside of a car and on a car trip. And I kind of was like, okay, let's get to the action. And then finally, when we get to the Horrorland theme park, it just lost me. It was so hard to follow in a lot of ways, and the twist I didn't really love because I didn't love the more comedic aspect that it took. It just was not my favorite. I really didn't enjoy this one. So far, this might be my least favorite Goosebumps book, which I'm sad about because I know people love this one. So for me, it just wasn't the best. Just my personal opinion, but I know some people really love it. It just was not my favorite. But I think I realized I don't really like theme park themed horror books, because I feel like if they don't stick into one place and they just kind of start jumping around from place to place to place, ride to ride to ride, carnival booth to carnival booth, I just get kind of annoyed with it, and I want it to be over because it just feels like so many random set pieces instead of one larger feel to it. So it just was not my favorite, unfortunately. So book number 10 was my Valentine's Day read, and that was Fear Street Super Chiller number 4, Broken Hearts. My wife actually got this one for me, and I really enjoyed it. It was my first super chiller I've ever read out of all the Fear Street books, and they're longer than the regular ones. These ones are about 200 pages. The regular Fear Street books are like 140, that kind of range. And so this one was good. It was interesting structure-wise, though, because you have a lot of different protagonists who the story is told through their eyes. And so it kind of jumps back and forth. Like, I would say there's not really a main character in this book. There are a lot of characters. It's an ensemble book, which is kind of interesting. Like, I don't know if I've ever really read a book like this that had that much of an ensemble. Even like Percy Jackson and the Heroes of Olympus series, where there are a lot of characters, each book there kind of has a focus character who's sort of the main point of that particular book. And this one really was a lot of people's story. Like, it just kind of belonged to a lot of different people. You're in a lot of different people's heads, and maybe because it's so short, it feels like more because it's only 200 pages. So you feel like you're hopping around quite a bit more than usual. but it's never distracting, I thought. It just had a very interesting structure. And the ending, I definitely did not guess, and I was excited about that. It was so much fun at the end. The last few scenes are like a whoa, what is happening kind of deal, which was so fun. So check out my review of this book for more. And then book number 11, oh, it was so creepy and crawly. And that was Mysterious book number 3, Terror in Shadow Canyon. If you have arachnophobia, do not read this book, because this book is literally crawling with spiders. I felt like spiders were crawling on me the whole time I read this book. And so I didn't like that aspect of it, but I loved the book. This book is deep. I think this book has such great layering with the characters and what is going on in their personal lives. What's beautiful about this book is it has such deep, good characterization, but it is all so organic to the plot. Like nothing ever sometimes character development kind of wrenches a story to a stop. And okay, we're going to take a break for a character development moment around the campfire where we're all going to get to know each other a little more. And this book, it does that in a way that builds the story and keeps it moving instead of bringing everything to a halt. And then, we finished the character development, back to the plot. It's not like that. The plot and the character development are seamlessly intertwined. And I loved that. I really think this book shows Matt McMahon's writing skill. I think he's a really great writer at this and bringing plots and character together and also creating a super creepy thing here. The other thing I actually didn't mention in my review of this book is that this book has a lot to say about parents and a very interesting commentary on parents. There was a parent-child interaction in this book that I don't think I've ever seen in a book before. And I've read a lot of these middle grade type books. I don't think I've ever read a book that had that same kind of interaction as this one did. And I would also say what's interesting here is there are a lot of parallels between the monster and what's happening with the characters, which is another great piece to this. It just is so woven together. It's like a spider web where it's all connected. It was so great. I had such a good time. But again, if you don't like spiders, don't read this book because it will creep you out. It creeped me out quite a bit, but I still liked it a lot. I got over my spider thing in order to finish reading this book because I liked it so much. And then book number 12, oh man, this was the nostalgia blast I really needed. And I just had so much fun rereading this book for the first time in probably 18, 20 years. And that was Forbidden Doors book number 1, The Society by Bill Myers. And I think it's so interesting because I came to the realization that these are really like a Fear Street book series for Christians. This is a Christian series. It's a Christian YA horror series, which is not something you see every day in the Christian fiction market. That just does not really come up that often. The 90s were a wild time, and that is included in this series. Pretty much this book series is about these two kids, a brother and sister, Becca and Scott, who are fighting demons in their hometown. And it is wild what happens in this book. I so enjoyed it. It was like the nostalgia, all coming back. It was so much fun. I had a great time. It was a little spooky. A little spookier than I remember even, actually, which I really enjoyed. There's definitely a lot of good mystery and action here. And I will say, the one thing that's kind of interesting is this book is set in the early 90s when the internet was in its infancy. And there are some stuff where the characters go on a bulletin board. And if you don't know what a bulletin board is, back in the day, they used to have, before chat rooms or even before, social media where people could post back and forth to each other, they would have these things called bulletin boards, which sometimes were kind of local. And you would dial into the bulletin board and you could post and people would post back to you. So it was sort of like an early social media. But it definitely had a lot of anonymous people on it. And this book features a character who they meet through the internet. So that's a little dated and a little dangerous, obviously, because you don't really know who people are on the internet. So you have to be careful with your information, those sorts of things. And these characters are not. So that's the caution. If you let your kids or your teenagers read this book. Just remind them of some internet safety. It's a good plan. And then book number 13 that I read, I was not prepared. Not prepared for this book. I actually haven't posted my review of it yet. I have it all filmed, ready to go, and I need to post it still. But good gravy. I have never read a fantasy book like this before. What book am I talking about? I'm talking about the Juna trilogy, book 1, Journey to Juna by Kim V. Engelman. The log line of this book is basically about these 3 kids who meet a giant magic swan named Laurel, who tells them that he needs their help to defeat the evil swan named Sebastian, who has blocked the tunnel to Swan Heaven called Juna. The tunnel is blocked with Sebastian's evil magic that he learned from reptiles who live in the tunnel, and the kids are the only ones who can defeat the evil swan Sebastian and save the day, so these suffering swans of Earth can make it to Juna. And also in Juna there is a rainbow of light that shines over Juna, and if the swans don't keep coming to Juna, the rainbow's light will diminish and go out, and Juna will be cast into shadows. And so this book is like Chronicles of Narnia meets A Wrinkle in Time meets My Little Pony, the 1980s version of the series, because it is just something else. I can't even explain it. It's so wild. Like, this book, I had to stop and read it out loud to my wife at parts to be like, you need to hear what is happening in this story. I don't even understand what is going on. It was so wild. I'll have my review up soon for a full in-depth conversation about it, but yeah, it was something else. I will say, if you're going to read this book and you want the old version, this is from the 90s, like 1996, I believe this one came out. It does contain some outdated language that is considered offensive today, so definitely be aware of that going into this book. There are some updated versions. I haven't checked to see if those removed any of that outdated language or if they kept it in, but this book was just the weirdest fantasy book I've ever read, I think. It was so strange. So strange. And then book number 14 that I read in February, another really great nostalgia throwback for me, was Forbidden Doors book number 2, The Deceived by Bill Myers. This one picks up the story right after where book 1 leaves off and just continues straight into the action. In this one, Becca and her brother are facing down what they believe about hypnotism, which is very interesting. This is actually the book that freaked me out about hypnotism, and I've never been hypnotized, and I don't want to be hypnotized because it kind of freaks me out a little bit, and I blame this book. But I don't personally ever want to be hypnotized still. So the main characters are facing this person who is a hypnotist who is trying to invite demons into their life, basically. It is another wild entry in the Forbidden Doors series. And pretty intense. This one has a very epic kind of action-filled finale that is pretty scary, that I thought was really well done, well written. These books have a lot of humor in them mixed in with the scares, though, which makes them different than Fear Street. They're definitely... Fear Street I don't always find as funny. Like, I just don't think R.L. Stine was writing those to be laugh out loud funny, but sometimes these books are kind of funny. I have to give another caveat on this one, unfortunately, book from the 90s, and it also contains some outdated language that is considered offensive today. So it happened, I think, one time, and I just thought, oh, that's so unfortunate that they kept this in. And I actually checked in the updated version because they re-released these books in an updated version in the early 2000s, and the word was still there. So I was kind of sad about that. I have not checked the newest edition they put out, a bind up of, they bound up 3 books in one. These books are like 150 to 170 pages long. And so they put 3 books in one, and I have not checked those to see if they updated the language at all there, but the newer one in the 2000s also had the word. So definitely be aware going into this. There's some outdated language here and there. It's really quick, one word, and then it moves past it. But that's definitely something to keep an eye out for in these older books from the 1990s, especially. Sometimes they do use language that is outdated today and considered offensive. So just be aware. Otherwise, this was such a fun read and just so much nostalgia. It was great to go back to this world, and I can't wait to go on to book 3 and kind of see what happens next, because I remember books 1 and 2 very well, but I actually don't really remember book 3 that much at all. So it's going to be fun to go back. Thank you so much for being here. It's been so much fun to go through another month of books, and here's to March. So here we go into March. See you, everyone. Until next time, keep reading. Bye.